That's okay. Ooh, there we go. So we thought for this continuing ed, actually, Tammy Swab, we'll have to tell Tammy Minky that she helped us think of this because she was here doing the Globe interview for us, and she talked about, we have on the walls, we kind of have the CASA 101 sheets, because we're doing class 11 right now. And today we're doing the CASA 101 stuff. And she goes, some of that stuff, I just really kind of not sure I remember. It's been almost two years or a little over 2 years for you and Tammy. Since class. So we thought today we would just go through some of the basics for my part. I always like the CASA 101 part. So they're humoring me and letting me do that today. I also want to say for Tammy and Margaret and Janice that went through the class when I was teaching it by myself, or if we had a Lori or somebody was helping us, that we've gotten a lot better at training.
Aw.
They've gotten a lot better. So these slides are something you guys probably didn't see, but that we use as part of regular training now. So if anybody wants any of these, we can email them out today. But Chelsea came up with this little graphic on the acronyms. So I think you guys probably all remember, but I was just going to give a quick reminder of the terminology that we use, because it's always different than the training manual. But once you're CASA here, these are the words that you'll hear in our jurisdiction. And I love how Chelsea did the graphic of it, of everything revolves around the child. So here we usually call the parents or the caregivers, whoever had the child. I know my friend is a CASA in Florida, and every time we talk, we get confused because placement there is caregivers. Every time she says something with the caregivers, she means placement. And so it confuses me. So, but in our jurisdiction, we just refer to the parents or the bio parents. Placement is what we use here for the terminology for where the child is currently located. Guardian ad litem, hopefully everybody remembers that, is the child's lawyer. That is the lawyer for the child and who we assist in the case. Legal questions refer to the GAL. The JO, your juvenile officer, everyone should have a juvenile officer that is to some degree or another involved in your child's case. They're fairly stable. It seems like some of you may have had some juvenile officer turnover this year, but not as much as we see in caseworkers. Of course, the judge, always there. CD, we abbreviate that most times to Children's Division. And then there's a case manager or caseworker. They don't seem to have a real preference, which we use. I've asked, and they don't seem to have a preference. So remember, your caseworker can either be from Children's Division or a contracted agency. So a lot of you may see Missouri Baptist Children's Home, MBCH, or PCHAS, Presbyterian Children. So that's your caseworker, works at Children's Division or one of those. And then, of course, the CASA. So that's the acronyms and the terminology for the kids, just for that encircle the child. Okay, once you go on, anybody else see anything else there that they're hearing that is an acronym on that you're not familiar with? Okay.
Yeah.
What did she?
She tried to like because of that.
Oh, except, okay. Oh, the recording, okay. These, I don't know that you'll hear these acronyms as often, but I just want to put them in front of you in case you do again. But, we should be having family support team meetings. Best practice is there's always one at 72 hours. We always see that. Child comes into care, there's always a meeting within 72 hours. The team is not all formed sometimes at that point. Placement may not have been established, so CASA may not be there yet, but we have the first meeting at 72 hours after the child comes into care. Then you should be seeing a case every 30 days, at 60 days, at 90 days. Now, I know in reality, those meetings do not happen that frequently. What I want to bring up to you today is if you're stymied and frustrated by meetings not occurring, they probably won't with the turnover and the turmoil at Children's Division. And we probably, Chelsea and Kennedy and Alana can throw rocks at me or tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think we're seeing the 30, 60, 90 days happen. But if you're getting out to about the 90 days on the case and you haven't had a meeting, let's raise some noise about it and do the right thing and get a meeting scheduled. And we've had to really get somewhat forceful about asking for meetings, and we're not hesitant to do that because we don't want your kids not, the team not getting together to talk about the kids. So then you should be having, after that time period, your post-permanency review team meetings, PPRTs. And should be a team member, all team members invited to that. I know it seems like we've had some drop off in parts of the team not attending, i.e. juvenile office and guardian ad litems. We hope to be able to get that back up and going when things settle down. But they should be happening every 6 months. So keep your eye kind of on your calendar that we don't just let our kids linger without a meeting, and we can be the squeaky wheel to make that happen. That's actually kind of what drove me to one of the many things that made me know we needed CASA in Jasper County is that the meetings that on the cases I was involved in just weren't happening. The kids were just going nowhere with nobody looking out for permanency. So we'll help you stay focused on that. Watch your dates and your meetings on that. And then the TDMs as needed for placement stability, change of placement, and case goal change. So if your placement's blowing up, they need to call a TDM. Or we're getting ready for a case goal change. So those are kind of the meetings that you guys should be part of, that you should see happening. If not, let us know. We'll help get there. Hey, it looks like Christy just joined us too. Hey, Christy. Okay, this one's busy. This kind of says what we just said there on a time frame. So we won't spend a lot of time on that one, but you should have that in your training book. If you don't, we'll get it to you if you want it. But it's just kind of the timeline of what should be best practice happening on your case. Again, the world's somewhat flexible, but when we get down to it, we want to make sure that the kids that they're getting the representation and the time that they need. We're still mostly getting desk reviews, the court calls them, that are on the 8:30 docket. So no one appears, not juvenile office, not children's division, not us. They strictly do it via written reports. So your written reports are even more important. So we're really making sure and working to get them in the best format with the clearest recommendations and what you want to highlight there, because there's not the verbal time to do this. We thought we'd be coming off that when COVID got, that's a COVID thing, and we thought they'd be going back, but there's been a number of cases in the courthouse and in the system and obviously in the community. So they're back to masks for all court hearings now and are staying with the desk review hearings for now. But again, remember, every adjudication, motion to modify hearing, i.e. the case goal change, or any kind of permanency, there will be a in-person review. And if you need an in-person review, talk to your volunteer coordinator. If we need to get in front of the judge, we can request it. Okay. So some CASA 101, and then just my last one, I can remember Margaret and Janice in your class having that up on the wall because I realized I wasn't talking about it enough. So I think CASA 101 started with your class, maybe with Tammy's, that are for every single court report we write, everything we do, we're looking to what our case goal for our kiddos is. Remember the 4 choices? Talk just real briefly about them. Reunification. I did see the reunification rate in Jasper County the other day was, I think, right at 40% now. It had been a little bit lower, but they come and go because those are quarterly numbers. That was about 40% of our cases end in reunification right now, which you always remember when you're working your case, that can be with a willing parent, fit and willing, right? Fit and willing parent. It doesn't have to be the parent they were removed from. If there is another natural biological parent, reunification can occur there. That looked familiar. Who was it? Yeah, we've seen a lot of it is. And some of to me, some of the most soul-searching, best interest work that we do is between adoption and guardianship. What is the best route for a case goal for our kiddos? And I think I can look at Angie right now. No, that's a hard one for hers. I see Tammy. I know that's been a hard one on her case. So when we're recommending case goals, we always want to talk those over with you. Don't hesitate at all to call and talk that over with your volunteer coordinator or with me or with anyone else that you want to bounce that off. Remember, in adoption, the biggest differentiator is going to be that the biological parents' rights are terminated by the judge or voluntarily terminated by the parents signing legal documentation. Their name can be changed. They get a new birth certificate. There is no way the biological parents will be able to reclaim, although I have seen one cool case where a dad later readopted his children, but it was a true adoption process. They had to, his parents signed over their parental rights back to their son. I think Tammy Swallow probably knows that case. The huge success story, but I think that's the only one I've ever heard of like that. But adoption will be a final sign off of termination of parental rights. Sometimes that's the right answer. Sometimes it's the only answer. I know of I was looking at some of our numbers for CASA today. We've got a pretty good number of case goal adoptions right now, which is the best thing and the right thing for the kids. You know, each situation is so unique. But as you ponder or look at adoption versus guardianship, it's sometimes hard for me. I've had to do I'm still not sure I'm there, changing my perspective on little kids with guardianship and maybe even infants almost with guardianship. That never felt like the right answer to me. And I'm still not sure how I feel about that. But in guardianship, remember that family member, family friend, or a completely unrelated person gets legal guardianship of the child. The biological parents still have their parental rights, but the guardians have the legal right to make all medical education decisions for the children. So there can be different factors that play into that of why guardianship might be a better idea. Maybe there's still hope for parental involvement in the future. Is that the one we see most often, I think?
There's a problem. If there's not legal grounds for adoptions, that's part of it too. There has to be certain things like there's abandonment clauses and things like that that have to be met legally for adoptions to happen. So sometimes guardianships are a quicker way to permanency with a similar result. That makes sense.
And then APWA, remember this is our kind of our aging out option. The child must be 16 years or over. And this is not obviously the one that really anybody wants. Sometimes it's where we're at. So it's also known as aging out. And we have several kids on that track now as well, too. So just remember, every time you're thinking about your case, thinking about your kids, what's our case goal in mind? What are we recommending when we write our court reports? What are the team meetings going to be looking at? So there's the basics of CASA.
Hey,
Case
Debbie,
goal. Yeah. Good job.
on the guardianship, what are the rights that the biological parents have? Is it just that if they clean up, they can get the kids back without having to adopt them?
Go for it.
I think that the intention with that would be that they have to petition a court. So there has to be further court involvement for them to get the kids back. But the guardians have decision-making power over typically visits with parents, education, medical, all of those decisions can be made by the guardian.
Where they live, at least in one of my cases, the aunt and uncle got guardianship and they immediately moved the kids to try to give them some break from the rough situation they've been living in. So I guess I don't think they get to decide much. You know, before guardianship, parents have to sign off on everything from haircuts to school decisions to everything else. All those rights do pass to all those decisions do pass to the guardian. But they can petition to get their rights established at a future date.
Okay.
Is APDLA, is that just a Missouri thing or is it the United States?
I don't know if it's called that throughout the United States or not. Do you, Chelsea, is that federal?
I don't know if it's the same terminology, but the same principle is everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Is it in our books, isn't it? It's in our books, so it has to be national.
Okay.
Is it in our manuals?
actually don't know. I don't say that.
Okay, she has,
Okay.
she has stumped the class. We will tell you.
I'll look at that.
Yeah, Linda asked if that applet is a nationwide designation or a Missouri, and we do not know, but we will by this afternoon. Ask at 5:30 and we'll know. Okay, guys, any questions on any of that CASA 101 or how? Anything else we can illuminate on that? And I hope that's helpful. We didn't want to beat that up, but we wanted to make sure that those basics are kind of stick with us. Yeah.
Or any other experiences with team members.
Yeah, any, if you got any experiences or anything you want to share on any of that or any insight?
Angie had a good question about guardianship. Does that mean the case closes? And that's yes.
Yes.
Any of those, if they're court ordered, the case is closed and your CASA roll is done, unless we call you otherwise. Margaret knows that too. Sometimes they come back.
Yeah. Sometimes cases reopen.
If the family does guardianship, it like placement,
Mhm.
okay, like one, like I have a behavior kid,
Yes.
and she's been through a lot of placements.
Mhm.
If she has guardianship, that's permanent, they can't send her to them.
They are responsible for her.
You want to talk about what that looks like, but when these cases close, like what it looks like from our end. Like, for instance, we don't always get notification about guardianships and adoption, and so making sure you're in touch with caseworkers to kind of help know when that finalizes.
Adoption and guardianship are separate legal, I don't know what's that, hearings, motions, cases, separate legal cases that CASAs and caseworkers I think get notified. We do not because we are appointed to the abuse and neglect case. So you may know more than we do sometimes about adoption and guardianship. You should be getting the information from about the hearings from that. If we get it, we'll pass it on to you, but you may get some that we do not as well, because they hire their own attorneys for guardianship and for adoption.
We do have a few neat things too right now. There's some local businesses in town that if your case is getting close to guardianship or adoption and the family would like cupcakes or balloons to celebrate, we can get those. And for reunification, we have a grant that will allow us to get like some basic needs kind of things like a laundry basket or towels or dishes or something like that if they need it. So let us know and we'll get those ordered.
The balloons are so fun.
They're cute.
The balloons are adorable. All right. Thank you, guys.
I'll just come over here so I don't have to move the camera. Mine will be quick. I just wanted to share with you about a new meeting or new type of plan at Children's Division called a TAPA. It stands for Temporary Alternative Placement Agreements. And all I want you to do is remember that term. If you hear it, you don't have to know a whole lot about this because it will typically happen before we're involved. But it's something good to ask about if you get a new case to see if they've had a top-up agreement. These allow, it's like a preventative measure. So they allow for kids to be placed out of the home for up to 90 days without court involvement. So it's very similar to a safety plan. They may be placed with a grandparent or a family member or a friend for those 90 days while a biological parent or caregiver is serving a short sentence in jail, or if they're attending a 30-day rehab, something like that. These plans are on the radar of the juvenile office. So the juvenile office is notified, but there is no court involvement. So it can always, if necessary, become a case where the children are removed. But for our purposes, just knowing to ask, has there been a TAPA agreement before is about all we need to know. Any questions on that?
They're gonna start that August 1st,
Yes.
correct?
August 1st. They'll start doing those here in Jasper County.
That different from Children's Haven?
It is different. Yeah, Children's Haven can be used by really pretty much anyone. And they have a little bit different time limit, like for kids in foster care because of payment things. They have a 30-day cap. And it's really, the purpose of Children's Haven is really for families who are not involved in the foster system yet. Like if somebody has a medical emergency or needs to go to rehab, they could use that. But they need to be accessible to the kiddos.
Question?
Only other thing I wanted to mention, I've been hearing from quite a few of you that you're waiting quite a while to hear back from caseworkers. That seems to be a pretty common occurrence. And I want to tell you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if that's the case. We can always talk with them. That is part of our job. Waiting even a week, we can start talking about game planning. We don't want to overstep. We don't want to nag them, but you guys do need to have that information, and being a party to the case, we're happy to help you get that information. That's our job. So don't hesitate to call and we can talk through that and plan together. Okay, that's all I've got.
All right. Oh, man. Okay, so the last little bit here, we're gonna hit on one other thing from pre-service training. Make sure I'm doing this right again. Back to sharing screens. We're not gonna go through this activity, but I wanted to remind y'all about the strengths-based approach. And I put this graphic up because I think if nothing else from training, this is one of the big things that we remember, because it's such a good activity to help us remember that like things might look kind of wobbly and may not look as great, or the way that we would expect them to, the way we would like for them to, but that there are strengths involved. And so just trying to keep that in mind, and trying to find those strengths. I know that that's something, I'll talk a little bit here in a second about our family assessment map. But even when we think maybe that's been done already, to kind of keep revisiting this every now and then, just to help, keep things in perspective and know that there are some good things at some point that have happened. But it can be tricky, which I understand, especially given how long a case might be going on. It gets harder and harder as those cases seem to lengthen and go for a long time. So just to kind of keep that in mind.
We might have time to do it. It's only 12:30.
That's true. You guys want to try to go through and look at this again and try to find things that we think are strengths in this photo or what we're seeing from the family? Welcome to this.
Yeah,
Shout out things that you see in there. What are some good things that you see happening in this photo?
Dad's working.
Yep, and the little boy hut seems to be exciting.
Yeah. There's food.
There's food, yeah. Excuse me, the pictures on the counter look to be family pictures. There is a sense of family.
Looks like the little one up front has toys to play with.
Mhm.
There is a litter box for a cat.
Or the baby to play in.
Hopefully. I know one a lot of people in class bring up is, y'all mentioned food on the counter. Also looks like there's medication, which it sitting out maybe isn't necessarily great, but it is there, meaning that they are using it.
Baby has a bottle. They're
Yep.
giving him.
The bottle right there on the table.
There are people in the home.
That's right.
Yeah, both of the parents, or at least 2 adults are present.
Awake.
Yeah, in a thing like that, yeah.
Well, in that books, is it books I see too? Like there's, or maybe it's a
That's
magazine.
what I was
bag.
thinking, or maybe it's
Magazine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
books and poems.
Hoping it was a kid's book.
Yeah. So sometimes it might be a little tricky to find. But there are things that are positive happening, so just try to kind of, again, something to revisit when things are dredging on or you're continually seeing some hard things come up. It's a good reminder that there, even in kind of the messiness, there's some good things there. So yeah, just kind of like I mentioned, yeah, you want to look for strengths and resources in the situation. One case that I've been helping an advocate with, we realized that like really any type of encouragement that we were able to give the bio mom was helpful for her. This was one of those instances that we had no meetings. They did the 72-hour meeting and then we had been asking at 30 days, at 60 days, at 90 days to have a meeting and there wasn't one. And so between all of us here in the office and then also with the advocate, we were able to kind of get one scheduled and the bio mom showed up, which was awesome. And one of the placements showed up and we were able just to tell the mom, we showed her the family assessment map, asked her if she'd seen it. She didn't recall seeing it, but there's some that may or may not be the thing, but what she kept on latching onto is in the middle part of it where it talks about the strengths and the things that she had done well. So this says that I can do this. We said, that's absolutely right. There are some things that you work on according to what Children's Division says needs to happen before you can get your kids back, but she really focused on the positive parts that had happened before. And so it was like, and that has kind of turned around. She had not been calling in for her drug testing. Also took it on herself. This is not something I told her she did not need to, but she took it on herself to check in with the mom just the day later. We had that meeting on Friday. So Saturday she texted the mom to ask if she had had a chance to call in. And she said, yep, she had. And I checked in last week and she had gotten a text from the mom almost every day about calling in for something. So even though we are always focused on best interest for the kiddos, sometimes that bridge over and doing things with the bio parent is helpful. And it was just really, it was amazing to me to see just that little bit of, you know what, yeah, there were some things that did go well, really encouraged her. But at the same time, remaining realistic is important with those strengths. And so there's also a reason why kiddos are in care. So kind of balancing that out, but that's also there. And then, like I said, the family assessment map should have some of that information outlined. It also kind of came out in that meeting that mom felt like that wasn't super accurate anymore. And so there's room for us to kind of ask, okay, can the caseworker now work with that mom to update that family assessment map to help her feel like it's a lot more accurate. So I'm going to show you a couple different things. I should have done the family assessment map first, but that's okay. So another tool to maybe kind of help you look at resources that's available. This is called an eco map. And it looks very similar to that outline that Chelsea had done with the different team players for a child. And it's kind of a similar idea where you're looking at a child, family unit, whatever, and then you're finding the things in their life that can be resources, that can be strengths, some things maybe that are not super strong also. So you can kind of understand the influence of what's happening for the family. And then that gives them a good opportunity to say, okay, well, this particular friend is a good resource for you. So maybe reach out to them if you're struggling about something. Or if a child is playing a sport and it's a really good thing for them, or seeing positive outcomes, then make sure that that child is involved in some sort of activity like that. Kind of a visual way to kind of see some of those resources. It might be kind of tricky to see, but you can see there's a key down here in the bottom that kind of outlines the different types of relationships. So that's how you can denote whether or not a relationship might be positive, it's a little bit stressed, or if it's negative. Just so, yeah, it gives you a good outlet for them to see. And then, this is kind of fun to do with yourself. I had to do these in class and like kind of outline, kind of look at my life and what things were positive and what things maybe weren't as much as we thought they were. Like, yeah, it was very interesting. So you might think about doing one for yourself, just to kind of see where some good things are and if there's anything else you might want to update. This is the family assessment map. If y'all haven't seen one recently, this is another good thing to ask about. If you haven't seen it, like with your case information. At that particular meeting I went to with the advocate, she had one printed and was able to give it to the mom so she could look at it. Which isn't necessarily.
The advocate had one?
Yes, that is how the mom was able to see her family assessment map, and she whipped it right on out and said, here it is. And so this is, again, kind of outlines, again, a harm statement, so why the children came into care. The danger statement is fear for future harm, so worst case scenario, what's going to happen if the kids stay where they are, and then the complicating factors are things that are outside of the child safety, but are still things that kind of play into the whole situation. When I referenced that mom earlier today, this middle section is what I said she really latched onto. So what's working well and those existing strengths, things that show that there was stability, that there were some positive behaviors and positive relationships. That's where she really honed in and said, okay, I can do this. So we were able to follow up with her and say, yeah, you can. We just got to get some other things taken care of, and maybe you can go back to what you already know how to do. Existing safety is what's worked well in the past and ways that the children have been kept safe previously. And then those goals, what needs to happen in that final column over there, the safety goals. So what Children's Division, or maybe even sometimes the juvenile office would like to see for the children to return home or to get them to a permanent placement. This also should be the goal of the family overall. Oh, it's one of my notes from training. Always, Chelsea talks about how this should be done usually in the parent's language or the family's language, so they understand what's going on. You don't want it to be filled with a lot of things that they aren't going to necessarily latch on to. And then the next steps, so what everyone needs to do and why that needs to happen. And yeah, we made sure in that meeting that the mom kind of understood what needed to happen because she felt a little bit lost. So this is a good tool to kind of keep an eye out for, like I said, if you haven't seen one recently or something like that. We wanted to ask y'all a question about, yeah, what, during your time as an advocate and looking at the strengths-based or trying to find strengths of the family, like, has it been easier than you thought it was going to be? Has it been a little harder? Like, how has that process been for you?
I look at a couple of you and think it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And you think it's gonna be, yeah, you've got a strength and it's gonna
I
be,
think when
pulling
going
out.
into it, I thought meeting the bio parents was gonna be really, really hard. Like, what do I have in common with them? I'm gonna talk to them. And that much was true, but it was easier than I thought it was gonna be. Sure, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it was easier to like some of these family members. After reading them on paper, you're like, gosh, that's right. But then you get to know them and they become part of your extended family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was hard for me too, at first, is just knowing we are with the bio parents, like what should happen, when should it happen, how much involvement should I have with them? Because we're looking at, you know, our focus is, we're able to be focused on the kids.
And they definitely did not like me at first because the kids would come to me and not them. And that was kind of a struggle too. For me to step back and let them be parents when the kids, it wasn't their nature to go to their parents because of what happened.
Yeah. Sure. Anyone else have thoughts on strengths and finding that in your situation with your kiddos? it's a tricky balance, I think. That I was just telling Debbie earlier, we're looking at a case goal or a case goal change on the case that I'm working on here pretty soon, and it's a struggle of, yeah, we've seen some really positive things happen from the parents, but then things have shifted, and how much longer can we have the kids waiting if you're waiting for them to kind of get back on track and all of that and everything like that. So, yeah, it's a tricky balance to know when those strengths that you have seen, like how they continue to play out and the things as it
Or
goes
if they
on.
completely fall apart.
Or if they
That's hard.
completely fall apart, which is, a little bit more of what happened in that one, but, well, all right, so the next thing, this is a little bit, kind of goes along with what Angie was just saying. We just sat in the office one day and talked through all of the things that the biological parents have going on in their minds and kind of in their lives, and thought, man, this is an uphill battle for them too. So just like kind of remember that as well when, things seem to get tricky. Like I said, in the case that I'm helping with right now, like things are going so well and then they're not anymore. And so just kind of keeping in mind this isn't for everyone. And also keep in mind too, that they're adults that have to be responsible to get these things taken care of too. So we don't want to make excuses at all, but there is also an element of all of these things could be happening, or a number of these things could be happening for a lot of people. And so, yeah, having your children removed, regardless of the reason, again, we say all the time in training, no one really sets out to be a bad parent. And so having a child removed can be really difficult. And then also, you might see this in some of the behaviors from parents, but like, they will try to control what they can because they felt like they've lost control over the situation. And so if you see them lashing out or feeling like, they're kind of being obstinate in some ways with moving forward on a case goal, like there's some things that they're trying to hold control of because their world has been rocked to in a lot of different ways. We know a lot of our families, we talk about this in the interview and in training, there might be some mental illness that's happening, and very likely it's been undiagnosed. And so there's a lot of that like they don't even realize that they're struggling with. I was listening to a parent on a call talk about struggles that he's having. Clearly, I was like, this man is depressed. Like, this is depression. But if they have not been to a professional to talk through that or kind of diagnose what it is, like they don't know what that is. And so then we also see a lot of parents using substances to help cope with a lot of it. And so kind of keep that in mind as well. Like when you get to a point, it's like, man, they just will not go get assistance. They won't do those intakes. They won't do X, Y, Z. A lot of them are relying on the substance just to help them cope because they don't have any other skills quite yet. And then keeping in mind too, they're trying to maintain employment, maintain housing, maintain transportation. And then also, I think this list kind of was the one that really shocked me with scheduling and all of the things that they have to try to keep in mind. So if they are working, there's employment there too, but getting visits scheduled, getting intake appointments done. If they are engaging in therapy and other treatment like that, then they have to have, that's another thing on the schedule to keep in mind. Social service appointments, like if they're getting food stamps or anything like that, they've got to get that stuff done. Home visits with the caseworker. There's just a lot. And so again, not in any way to make an excuse, and they absolutely have to take these steps as they're lined out, but also kind of keep in mind, especially early on in a case, there's a reason why a lot of these things feels like they're moving pretty slowly in the beginning.
Yeah, I wanted to add too, we talked about, Alana just mentioned substance abuse. A lot of our parents who are using have been using since they were like teenagers. And when we're seeing them, they're about in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So they've been on substances for decades. I think that it's just important to recognize that when we're asking them to get off substances. Obviously, that's something that we want to have happen and that needs to happen for them to be reunified with their children. But just thinking about how plausible it is that they can do that in a matter of months when they've been addicted for tens of years. So, and then, yeah, Alana talked about children being removed. So a lot of times, more than likely, we're seeing the parents at one of their lowest or their lowest point in their lives. Something happened that their kids were taken into care. Maybe they were just getting out of a domestic violence relationship, or they just had like a mental illness, a bad episode, and that's the reason that the cops were called or something like that. So just be aware of that when you're working with them. Yeah, and then all the other things on this list that they're also trying to deal with while also working with CASA and working with the juvenile office and working with children's division and working maybe with their parole officer, maybe trying to get their own housing, trying to get employment. We're asking them to do all this stuff in a couple of years or a couple of months, and that's just a lot for them to completely turn their lives around.
We've got about 10 minutes left. Just kind of wanted to open the floor again for questions or, thoughts as you've worked a case, how it's gone, what surprised you, what has been, surprised you in a good way, what has been surprising in a bad way, maybe, anything like that you are, just kind of working through and dealing with.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one.
Is our, the parent of our CASA child supposed to see our court report?
We send it to their attorney,
Oh, okay.
but they're welcome to see it.
Oh,
right?
I didn't, I needed to know whether they're gonna see it or not,
Yeah,
I didn't know.
we don't send it to them, but if they want to, you're welcome to
Okay.
send it to them. But if you didn't want to, you don't have to.
Well, I know she did see it, and I just wanted to know if they were supposed to or not.
Their attorney may have showed them.
Okay.
My biggest frustration is the fact that these parents get to see their children when they continue to use drugs and the courts know it and they won't show up for drug tests. And I just still don't understand why. Because I feel like my parent, had that right been taken away from him, he would have gotten help, but he's never gotten help in 2 years. So that's very frustrating to me. I don't know that Newton County lets them continue to see the kids when they continue to test positive, but I know Jasper County does.
I don't know, Kevin, I've heard a little bit, and you guys weigh in too. I've heard just a little bit of discussion about that was, are we punishing the children? It's parents' behavior, the kids are dying to see their parents, and so much want to see their parents. Because I think I've seen it go both ways, even in Jasper County, that some they do and some they don't. And I don't know, we can always recommend there, but I think keeping in mind, is it punishment against the child too? But I hadn't even thought about it, Tammy, in that frame, that maybe that would have motivated him to be more
And this-
willing to work on it if he wasn't seeing him. Maybe I hadn't thought about it that way. Just what I discussed, I heard when I asked the question before was, oh, well, you're punishing the child for the parent's behavior if you cut off visits.
But then what happens when the rights are completely terminated of the parent and the child's seen them for 2.5 years?
That's a rough one because they see the children up until the day rights are terminated. So that is a rough go. You're right.
That's where I am on my case, and I'm getting very concerned about what it's going to do to the child.
Reasonable effort that the court can require to show that the parents have been given opportunity. I know your case is a little different, Tammy, but in a lot of cases, being able to show that people are not exercising those visits can be grounds for termination of rights. So some of that is due to.
What the law requires is the reasonable efforts. And if they've not even made the reasonable effort to see the child, that can be grounds.
Yeah, and he does do that. That's the one thing the dad does do. So makes his visits pretty much when he's supposed to, pretty regularly. But he hasn't done anything else we've asked, nothing in the case go.
Yeah, yours breaks my heart.
Mine too, because he's not a horrible person. It's just he has some issues that we haven't forced him to deal with.
Give him a lot of opportunities, but he's not taking
Yep.
any.
Yeah.
Anything else y'all run into or would like to talk with other CASAs around too? Kind of how things are going?
When you write a court report that is going to be the conclusion, and they are gonna be, you know, I guess whatever y'all do, step back, children's division.
After the
How's
permanency,
that worded? I don't know how that's.
the judge will grant one of those type of permanencies, like either the adoption will be completed, is that what you mean, Linda?
Well, I
Or the
mean,
guardianship will
write
be
a
ordered.
report or something before that.
Yeah, you'll go through the motion to modify the case goal to adoption or guardianship, and then take that all the way through to that final ruling.
I guess I'll just
Because it's
ask when
going
it
to
gets there.
reunification.
I don't
Oh,
know.
yours is going to reunification?
I hope so.
Yeah, then you'll get an order that
Everything
children's,
good. Yeah.
the children, you'll get an order that children's are released from custody. You'll go through a whole trial home visit.
They're on, they go with May first.
I mean, okay, you may be on the way then. So, yeah, you'll get, from that one, you'll get an order. Maybe not timely, but.
The caseworker will also they'll do a reunification home study. The caseworker will, and you should be included.
All right, well, we won't keep y'all, but if you want to stick around, ask questions or anything like that, you're welcome to. But yeah, that's all we have for today. Hopefully, like Debbie said, we didn't want to get too far back into the training weeds, but also kind of refresh some of that information and make sure it was at least top of mind for you or something that, yeah, just a good refresher. We, like she said too, if any of the handouts you saw, and actually there's a couple of them that we didn't even go through today, about placements or different types of visitation. If you would like us to send you any of those, if you're from some of those previous classes, some of the first ones that we have, I'd be happy to do that. So you just let me know and I'll get those out to you. It's good to see you all today. Have a
Thank
good
you.
week.
You.